So no matter how many textbooks you read and how many seminars you listen to, but you need to interact with people. The lack of fund and lack of infrastructure, and so it needs to a kind of negative politicization. The private universities' issues are never being debated in this country. Subscription should only be done by a one nation and one subscription, one nation formula. Then, there is a kind of a controlling mechanism. So there is a difference between government control and a political party control. The vice-chancellors has also been not just politicized, but it's highly personalized.
Hello, Federal viewers. Welcome to a chat with Professor Mr. Ramu Manivannan. He's the Professor of Political Science. He taught in many Indian universities, including Delhi University. I'll be talking to him about the recent issue of how Delhi University, the colloquium, the Friday colloquium was stalled yesterday, citing lack of approval from the university. So let's talk to Professor Ramu Manivannan to get to the details of what are the changes being witnessed in the universities across India. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show. Can you please share your experience, your response to what happened in the Delhi University? The professors have been asked to take permission to organize meetings. How important are those meetings, and why the universities are asking them to seek permission?
I think this is the changing academic and the university norms and administrative culture in the country, across the country, not only in Delhi University, but this is happening all over the country. But what I see now is recently what happened in Delhi University is very disheartening, and then it's one of the most highly acclaimed institutions of learning. The Department of Sociology and Delhi School of Economics is a highly reputed institution. But if this can happen in Delhi University, particularly in the Department of Sociology, and this explains the state of affairs in the country. And secondly, the reasons given by the administration that this program stands cancelled, I don't think it's a very democratic practice. Democratic practice is one thing, and another thing is that I also don't see the reason why a department, the sociology department, should take permission from the university administration for holding a colloquium, which has been held weekly on Fridays for the last 60 years. And but there is no precedence for every Friday that the department has sought permission for holding this in the last 60 years, or even in the last 10 years, or say in the last 5 years. So why are we setting up new precedents for holding academic events and academic activities, even if this is perceived to be political? But in a classroom, what is spoken and as an academic forum, it stands as an academic learning. And it should be seen that way by the administration and by the government or by the state.
Professor, you had earlier worked in the Delhi University. What was the political climate in the university earlier? And do you see any changes now? Not just Delhi University, in JNU, in many other universities have witnessed major changes. As a professor, and just explain to us, you have visited those universities and you travel across many other universities in many foreign countries. Please explain to us what are the major changes that you see that are taking place in the Indian universities.
I think about the more and more political control, or the administrative control of the academic affairs. We need to administer education, but as well as to facilitate the teaching and learning process in an academic thing, because the universities are the only few spaces which are left as a democratic space. And even if political debates are held, and then various viewpoints are shared, and it should be seen as part of an academic, and then inculcating democratic values in a society. These are what you call as the oxygen spaces in the political society. And where when you come out of the university, you can't really speak, you can't really do many things. You have to be in the party. And here is as a non-party and as a political students who are political education is very important. But to be politicizing that, to be seen this way as a kind of what's being called as the urban nationalism, and then this is a counterculture. I don't think this has always been an academic and open space. And in Delhi University and in JNU and Delhi University are known for very democratic and open expressions of students and faculty and classroom democracy. And at least I call that as a classroom democracy, not in a public space. But there has to be a struggle. There has always been a struggle to preserve that space. But that struggle is becoming weaker and weaker. And that's what I call is it's becoming much thinner. That struggle is becoming much thinner in the recent years. And that's what is the worrying phenomenon. Like it's happening all over the world. And what is happening in the United States, for example, is also another kind of repression of a public view, like what's happening by the US administration, the current administration in the United States towards major universities across the United States itself is a sign of the changing times in different countries as well. But in India, and I always believe that in India, we have always had more democratic space. I want to be very honest about, even countries in the West have had problems of freedom of expression, despite their constitutional and political claim as more democratic. But Indian universities have always been more democratic in expression in classes and public space that we have had that. I think that space is shrinking. And this is happening all over the state, all over the country. And there is kind of a more and more administrative control. And you don't get even the vice-chancellors and then the registrars or academic persons. They're mostly administrators and bureaucrats and with no experience in academic and scholarship. So I think this is the problem with the universities in India now.
Professor, the Friday meetings earlier conducted by the Department of Sociology and the Economics in the Delhi University had many guests, many important speakers, writers, people from various fields. How far this would empower students who attend those series, and how important is for a student to learn from the real world?
I think it's very, very important for students to learn from the real world. I mean, whether it's about the human rights, it's about the tribal rights issues and land, democracy, and then about the women justice and women's right. So these are all the real happenings in the world, actually. So no matter how many textbooks you read and how many seminars you listen to, but you need to interact with people. You need to interact with people who bring this knowledge to the classroom from outside world. So this is a very, very important component to learning and education. I think this space is what is becoming challenged now by the political system. And including, I want to mention one fact about the Indian political system is that the same politicians and same political parties want to speak in universities and speak in colleges when they are in opposition. And when they become a ruling party and they find the universities as not is a one-way perspective, see that place as a very rebellious and very democracy becomes a problem to the same parties and powers, actually. So this is the experience of the entire history of democracy movement in India, where universities are a democratic space when it is seen as an supporting an opposition movement. When it is questioning the government and the system, it's seen as a place of an urban nationalism and resistance or a counter perspectives.
Professor, in JNU, the systems, there were many administrative systems. The attendance has become very mandatory now, and the scholarships have been reduced. And there are many rules and regulations even to organize a protest. Earlier, JNU used to be the fortress of the left thinkers, but now it has all changed. How do you look at this change?
Yeah, I think there are two questions. First is about attendance and then the fellowship. I think that it's reasonable to assume that the students and scholars and should be in the university, should at least if they are taking leave and it should be recorded. And I don't see that problem about attendance and fellowship question. And then, the cancellation of the fellowship, and then, there is something about scholarship. Like, for instance, about, the different universities have different practice of classrooms, and like, in you do your classes and go to library, you are expected to go to library, and you go to library. But the question arises when the teachers and the students don't use that freedom appropriately. Then, there has to be certain curbs and regulations. And then when you are asking about, administrative changes in a sense, the rules and regulations which does not promote learning, classroom learning or academic freedom, and they are simply administrative rules. So that kind of control in universities is not positive and will not really help, actually. And so that's one thing. And then how the administrative system, for example, is that it's more and more repressive, in a sense that, several universities do not even have proper administrators, whether the position of registrars or, the vice chancellors. Even if you take the case of Madras University, and then, you have problems, for last 5 years and more, you have not had a vice chancellor, and you have not had any the teacher appointments, and then you expect the classes to happen. And how can the classes happen then? About, on top of that, and the lack of fund and lack of infrastructure, and so if the it needs to a kind of negative politicization. On the other hand, that when classes are happening, when there are discussions are held, and then colloquiums are being cancelled, then it kind of, where do what should the universities do in this situation?
Professor,
The
my
question arises.
question is why our universities are completely dependent only on the funds by the government. Why can't the universities, make up some money to the functioning? Why they are unable to collaborate with the industries to fund the research or for the grants? Where are we missing
Why?
that link?
No, what about the public universities? That it's a responsibility of the government. Why should the universities forego the right to that funding process, claim the funding? It's a public funded universities. Like, you have the government hospital, you have the government schools, then you have the government funded universities. The question is that the funding is not happening, and if the funding is happening properly, then it's not being utilized properly, but because it's a political appointments in the university positions. You take most of the university positions are, politically appointed in terms of the higher officials, whether it's vice chancellors or the registrars. Then there is no accountability of the performance, or, issues like corruption or misappropriation of funds. And then if they kind of, play to the tune of the political masters, and they get elevated, actually. So on the other hand, so the problem is not about, the university's funding is they should go and collaborate with the private industrialists. There are already private universities, and then, the private universities issues are never being debated in this country, and how private universities are done, and then how their right to conduct seminars and workshops, the internationalization, all that's happening very smoothly. But it's only happening in the government funded universities, and the problem is not about, the quality of teachers, or about the its curriculum. It's more about the administration and control of these the institutions.
Okay. Professor, recently there was a scheme introduced by the union government, One Nation, One Subscription Plan, where all the universities were asked to, get into this One Nation, One Subscription Plan to subscribe any magazines, research magazines, all that. So the government of India wanted to have a uniform plan for all the universities. As a professor, how do you look at this?
You can have, for example, digitally speaking, in digital terms, you can have access to books and journals and magazines, and across the country. All universities can, by web portal, be linked, and then you have a common access. Instead of doing that, This is one way of looking at it. Then, what is the idea of the journal and the books is that not all universities and research institutions can afford to buy a same journal and the same book across the country, but to be make it available to the entire country is one way of democratizing. But to say that the subscription should only be done by a one nation and one subscription, one nation formula, then there is a kind of a controlling mechanism, like the way UGC has been controlled for a long time by in terms of including in curriculum, then the designing, then as well as the appointments, and the entire process is it's the political control or there is a difference between government control and a political party control. So this whole ideological and political party control is becoming more and more apparent now.
Professor, the vice chancellor's post in many, universities, particularly in the non-BJP ruled states, the funds are not being allotted, the posts are not being filled. How will this result in a long run?
No, it's not about how will this result. It's already result. It's all the results are already there actually because you how can you expect a university to be run by an ad hoc committee and kind of a group of what you call is the teachers union lobbyists, and they are the ones who are being made into the convening committee. If you take the convenience committee, it's all run by a convenience committee, and who play to the tune of the government in the state. If it's a Tamil Nadu, you play the Madras University, or if it's in the other universities in the state or at the center, it's with the union government. So the convening committee is the kind of they play to the tune, and then they virtually control the administrative and the political. It's an appeasement of one towards another. And then the appointment of university vice chancellors has also been high, not just politicized, but it's highly personalized. You appoint somebody who's a kind of a lackey to a minister or to a senior bureaucrat, and not a scholar, an academic, or an academic administrator with the proven abilities to run an educational institutions actually. So I think this is a very, very dangerous trend. And it's not that we are waiting for the results to show in the next few years. We already have the results across the country and in the premier universities, and also the whether it's the BJP run BJP run states or non BJP run states, you have enormous evidences to prove that it is affecting the common people, the students and the parents and the families, including the job opportunities and the placements.